to Global Issues and Answers. We're going to do an interesting show today with a very good friend of mine, Aida Thomas. She and I both were members of the Church of Scientology for a very long time. We're both trained spiritual counselors, and we both were kind of kicked out of the church for rebelling against doctrinal changes that the current Scientology management has gradually entered into the religion, which we think has perverted it. Anyway, Aida is now with the International Free Zone Association. Welcome, Aida.
Thank you.
And what would you like to talk about today?
Well, I would like to talk about how, as a result of the changes, there has been religious shunning, there has been expellings that were unjust, and how people's lives were devastated by that.
Yeah, it's including my own, including yours to some extent.
And hundreds of people all over the planet, actually, not just you and I.
Oh, yeah,
here
many people. Before we go on, I'd like to tell our audience that we're taping this on May 23rd, 2006, so you get an idea of the context. Also, you know, I don't want the viewpoints we state on the show to necessarily reflect on any organization or even on any individual. For instance, I may say something that Aida doesn't agree with, and she may say something that I don't agree with, and it's just basically a conversation. Right. So I'm doing kind of a global disclaimer here. Okay. So we don't get each other into trouble.
Right.
Anyway, so Aida and I met a while back when I was in the process of getting kicked out of the church. Why don't you tell our audience about that a little bit?
Well, in recent years, there has been some changes in the philosophy of Scientology, not how it was written by the founder, L. Ron Hubbard, and all those who opposed to the new management were kicked out of Scientology, regardless of who they were.
Yeah, yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, Aida and I have both been in Scientology for a very long time, or had been in for a very long time. Mm-hmm. I got involved in 1970 in New York, and when was it that you got involved?
I got involved in 1976 in San Diego, California.
Uh-huh. And your husband's a Scientologist, or was, well, you're both still Scientologists.
Yes.
Okay. But you're not in good standing. So what happened? Why did you get, you know, repudiated by the church?
Well, what happened is that they have been alteration of the scriptures of Scientology. Mm-hmm. The new management that took over after the death of the founder did some alterations, and I'd like to show you some tonight.
Okay, sure.
All right. One of the alterations is in the auditor's code. An auditor, as we know, is a counselor in Scientology. And there is one point in particular, and what I'm going to show here is one that was printed in 1980. Mm-hmm. This is the Auditor's Code. And then I have this book where Ron originally wrote the Auditor's Code. And there are some differences here that from what he said. I have it marked here. Let me see, where did I put it?
You know, the Auditor's Code is really important. It's one of the most important short pieces in Scientology. It's what a Scientology counselor has to follow.
It's a set of rules in order to protect the person who is receiving the counseling, and in order to protect the counselor as well. Mm-hmm. You know, like the doctors have their own rules that they're not supposed to be broken, and for ethical and legal reasons. Mm-hmm. So in this one is a list of promises that one makes. And on this one, in point number 25 of this series of codes, this was written in 1968, and it says here, I promise to cooperate fully with the legal organizations of Dianetics and Scientology as developed by L. Ron Hubbard in safeguarding the ethical use and practice of the subject according to the basics of standard tech. This is what L. Ron Hubbard wrote. It's as developed by him. But the new management decided that that had to be changed. And they changed that point, and it says here, I promise to cooperate fully with the authorized. They changed legal to authorized. And it says, I promise to cooperate fully with the authorized organizations of Dianetics and Scientology in safeguarding the ethical use and practice of those subjects. And as you notice, it doesn't say as developed by L. Ron Hubbard.
So they're diminishing the authorship to some extent.
Not only that, when you go to do Scientology, you are thinking that you're going to receive L. Ron Hubbard's tech. But that's not the case.
Tech meaning technology.
The technology, yes.
To back up a little bit, Scientology is an applied religious philosophy. And so there's what Scientologists, or what Hubbard called technology, which means certain procedures and methods that are used to help people achieve spiritual enlightenment. And the word technology is generally used by Scientologists to denote the procedures of Scientology as distinguished from the philosophy of the subject, or the religious aspects of the subject.
That's very correct.
So when we talk about technology, that's what I want to make sure that we're not confusing people, because Scientology has a whole lingo of its own, and Scientologists who are really wrapped up in the subject are used to talking using the lingo of the subject. So now you were trained to a very high point in Scientology.
Yes, I came from Mexico 25 years ago. I studied law in Mexico. I was on the way to becoming a lawyer when I found out about Scientology, and I liked the idea of becoming a Scientology counselor instead, because I realized that helping people not through legal means, but through spiritual and mental means was much better. And so...
That's good. And then you did a lot of training, and you did your training in English, not in Spanish, right?
That's correct.
And so you became, what's your classification? They have different classifications of levels of competence in Scientology, and a Scientology counselor is called an auditor. So what level auditor are you, Aida?
I'm a Class 8 auditor, which will be the equivalent in this country who are a master or a doctor.
It's probably a doctorate.
Right.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. And it takes years to get to that level, right?
Very many years, yes, just like if you went to college.
Yeah.
But what I want to explain here is that the new management decides to change the original writings of L. Ron Hubbard.
Yes.
And one of them, they even canceled some of them. They even decided not to publish some of the books. And one of the ones that I want to show today is one that is called, because I want to talk about religious shunning and the devastation that that brings. Here is a policy letter that he wrote on 15 November 1968, which is called Cancellation of Disconnection.
Yes.
And ever since then, he realized that we don't need to disconnect. We don't need to have, like in the Catholic Church, you know, what is they call in the Catholic Church?
Excommunication.
Excommunication. And so this new
Why don't you just read it? It's only one. The policy letter is only one sentence long. Why don't you just read it?
I will read it. ACOPL, 15 November 1968, cancellation of disconnection. Since we can now handle all types of disconnection as a condition, is cancelled. L. Ron Hubbard, founder.
That's good. So that's pretty clear.
That's pretty clear.
Now, most of our audience doesn't know what the heck disconnection is. So why don't you define it? Is it any different from excommunication?
Yes, it's much different, because in the Catholic Church, people don't lose their families, they don't lose their jobs, they don't lose their friends. In this case, you do. In Scientology, when you are disconnected or ordered disconnection, you lose your job, you lose your friends. you are what they call now considered a suppressive person or a SP, and that is considered like a criminal. And it's a sort of slander in your person, because if you work for a Scientology business, then you are considered a criminal, and then you lose your job. Your friends stop talking to you, and if you work on anything related to Scientology, you're out. All your friends, all your relatives, if they're Scientologists, and all your business fall apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty... I think the church makes it clear to the person that if they don't follow the rules exactly, they will suffer this punishment of being kicked out of the church. And then anybody who is a Scientologist who communicates to the person who's been kicked out also gets kicked out.
Right.
So, and a lot of people work with other Scientologists, so they would lose their livelihood. I mean, you know, if somebody works for IBM or General Electric, they're not going to lose their income if they get declared a suppressive person by the Church of Scientology.
No, right. I have a friend, for example, who has been a counselor for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
She's in her mid-60s, and she's now declared a suppressive person. She has never done any other job in the last 30 years, so now that she's considered a criminal, nobody talks to her, and her livelihood is gone. They don't care.
Yeah, it's very... there's not very much compassion exhibited by the organization currently.
Not at all, not at all. And many people have lost their children. You're one of them.
Yes.
When was the last time you saw your child? 5 years ago? 6 years ago?
No, we did see him a couple of years ago, and he did talk to us briefly. But, you know, it's the thing about it is that the church has told my son lies about me, and I can't defend myself because he's not allowed to talk to me directly. So that's what happens when somebody is declared a suppressive person or expelled by the Church of Scientology. The church then often tells lies about the person, which justifies their action of kicking the person out.
Right, and then you cannot explain to them.
You can't explain to your friends and they believe the lies because, you know, I remember one staff member who was kicked out, and the church told people that he was a pedophile. So of course, you know, you think, well, that's a good justification for kicking this person out. But of course we know that that was probably not true. I've talked to people who've been kicked out of the church, and I've told them what I heard from the church about them, and they laughed at me and said, that's ridiculous, that never happened.
Well, that is called slander in the legal term, you know, because they actually say that the person, by telling that they are suppressive and that you can no longer talk to them, is equivalent of saying that you are a criminal. And not only that, they add the lies, like in your friend that they call him a pedophile. All of that is in the legal word, is slandering. And the most amazing thing is that not only you and I have now been expelled and we can no longer communicate, the very wife of L. Ron Hubbard, Marisol Hubbard, was as well, you know.
Well, I don't think she was declared a suppressive person or expelled. I mean, I don't think her children disconnected from her, right?
Well, here...
But she was denigrated by the current management to some extent.
Yes, there is...
Her status was denigrated.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. And here's an article that was written by Michael Moore, the president of the International Free Zone Association, which is a group of Scientologists outside the church. And he mentions here that when Mary Sue Hubbard, they didn't even make a memorial or anything to let the people know that she had died. Actually, Scientologists don't even know that she had died, which is amazing. And so she was also considered a persona non grata, the very wife of the founder of Scientology. That goes to show you
it's if Laura Bush died and they try to hide the fact. that that George Bush tried to hide the fact that his wife died, kind of.
Exactly.
This is a principal person in Scientology. She was not only Hubbard's wife, but she ran large parts of the organization
and
with
she helped him develop some of the technology of Scientology. Yes. They worked together hand in hand on many of the procedures of Scientology. She was his most important assistant in life, as a wife, as a person, as everything to him. And now she died as a nobody. Not even the church recognized that, because the new management, whenever you don't agree with their alterations of that technology, you're out. I have a list of people here, of the very closest people of L. Ron Hubbard. They are all also expelled, considered criminal, psychotic, you name it. And I'll tell you a couple of them just to show you. You have, for example, Otto Roos, or how you pronounce it?
Otto Roos.
Otto Roos. He was a personal friend of L. Ron Hubbard. He was declared. You have Ken Urquhart. He was LRH Butler. He was his personal communicator for 15 years, and you're going to tell me that L. Ron Hubbard would have, for 15 years in his life, someone who is psychotic or criminal?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. And here's a list of all the people who were close associates of him. They are now out and declared or considered persona non grata. Mm-hmm. Management likes to alter the technology because they have their own agenda. What? I don't know, but definitely not Scientology.
Yeah, we can't figure out what their agenda is.
The thing is, anybody that disagrees with them is expelled. So here we have a list of what they consider the Scientology enemies. And this list is about 15 years old. So it has become a lot larger in the last 15 years, I assure you. And look at this. It goes page after page after page after page.
Yeah, hundreds of people.
Hundreds of people all over the world. They lost their friends, their relatives, their jobs, their livelihood, their religion, their freedom of religion, because some of them are not allowed to talk, or some of them are very afraid to talk.
You know, there's the Scientology organizations, because there are many different organizations, have different levels. So the most senior management organization is the Sea Organization.
Right.
And the people in the Sea Org, the staff members of the Sea Org, have to sign a contract that they will remain on staff for 1 billion years, because within Scientology there is the concept of past lives and future lives, that you reincarnate basically over and over again. And so you sign a contract that you'll work toward the goals and aims of Scientology for 1 billion years, and that and you're given room and board and your medical care or whatever, food, and that's the top echelon of Scientology. Then there are the organizations where you can be on staff, but you're not necessarily a Sea Organization member. The commitment is not as great. Or you can train, you can do the Scientology training and become a trained counselor, and you can go off on your own, as Aida did, right, and charge money for your services and counsel people or train them, give them some training, some basic understanding of Scientology by doing courses. But what I've noticed, the Sea Organization, the staff members are often under so much pressure that in order to get themselves, something goes wrong, in order to get themselves off the hook, they'll just find a scapegoat. Right. So they'll ruin a person's life just so that they won't lose their vacation or their weekend off, or so that they won't get demoted. In other words, something went wrong in the organization. It's really easy to find somebody in the organization to blame, but it's even easier to find somebody outside the organization to blame. So the people who have no power in Scientology are often the people who've been loyal Scientologists for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to them.
It doesn't matter because
it doesn't make any difference to them.
You know, it's really kind of it's really kind of, it's very mean. The justice system currently in Scientology is very mean.
Right. You know, I wonder if the Church of Scientology doesn't exist anymore, to tell you the truth. They now call it the Scientology religion. I have this booklet that was distributed by the current management in 1993, and they don't call it the Church of Scientology, they call it the Scientology religion, which is now allegedly owned, and per this booklet, by the Church of Spiritual Technology. And according to this booklet, the Church of Spiritual Technology is a California tax-exempt religious corporation. It is not part of the church, and it does not participate in its day-to-day affairs, it says here. And it was formed in 1982 to receive L. Ron Hubbard's estate. In other words, they own, according or allegedly, according to some documents, they own all the valuable intellectual properties of his life's work. Mm-hmm. And here it is. And it says, of the Scientology religion. I don't see the Church of Scientology, so I don't know if that church exists anymore. But here's the description inside, per their own booklet, of the Church of Spiritual Technology, who now owns all this technology.
Well, you know, Scientology has been sued so many times that they have created lots of different corporations that are actually, from my experience and Aida's experience, we're pretty certain that the head management of the Religious Technology Center controls the other organizations, and they control them by threatening to expel people from the different organizations. But these organizations are separate nonprofit entities, so that if one is sued, one can be completely collapsed, but it won't affect, financially at least, the other organizations. So it's kind of like a shell game that's being played.
But they are all controlled by the Church of Spiritual Technology.
I don't know if they're controlled. I think that this Church of Spiritual Technology may own the copyrights to the materials.
But if the money that is made from those copyright materials, where does it go? There is here this document I found in the internet on the website of the California State Department, where it says that the Church of Spiritual Technology is a corporation and the agent for service of profit, or process, I'm sorry, is Sherman Lenski. Sherman Lenski is not a Scientologist.
Well, we don't know that for sure.
That's true.
Yesterday, or before the show airs, he could say he's a Scientologist.
That is true.
We don't know that. You know, yes. He didn't tell us that.
Well, yeah, that's correct. I never knew that he has done any services personally, so perhaps he's done, but not to my knowledge in my 30 years in Scientology.
It's suspected that he's not even a Scientologist.
Right.
But it's so complex. But the bottom line is that here's a religion, and whatever you think about it or don't think about it, there are people who believe in it. I mean, you think that there are a lot of good things about Scientology.
Yeah, there are a lot of good things. There's technology on how to study that really helps people with study problems. Mm-hmm. Actually, it helped me, you know, to learn better, and English and all those things. But due to these alterations of the technology of Scientology, there has been a lot of destruction and a lot of bad PR for Scientology. And many people has lost their business, they lost their companies, they lost husbands or wives or children, like I said this before. I've been to Europe and I have met people that has lost all of their friends, all of their livelihood because of this new management.
Yes, and you got kicked out yourself because of complaining about alterations of the courses, right?
Yes, well, I found, like, for example, this book is called Overcoming the Ups and Downs in Life. This is not by L. Ron Hubbard. It's based on the works of L. Ron Hubbard. And I say, what is this? And the moment that I ask, they consider that I was undesirable. It's like a Christian going and questioning the Ten Commandments or the story of Jesus Christ or whatever, and then being expelled because of that.
Yeah, and the thing is that Scientology advertises itself as a religion for people who are learning how to think more for themselves. But if you start to think for yourself and talk about what you think, they don't like that inside the church. You know, especially inside the structure of the Sea organization. They like obedience. They don't like people. They tend to kick people out, kick people off staff who ruffle the feathers or who don't just obey.
Right. So the moment
command intention. It's called command intention. You're not supposed to ever question command intention. Well, you know, that's just totalitarianism in a religious form.
Very totalitarian. The moment that you say something that they don't like, the other staff members or the other parishioners cannot say anything because it is against the rule to talk about or against management or whatever management orders.
And why do people put up with it? I mean, we put up with it for a long time. You know, I don't understand. I shake my head at myself that I didn't see through this.
Well, because at first you think it's going to get handled and you report it to the seniors or you report it here and there, and before you know, 1 year has gone by and that 2 years go by until one day you say, that's it, I'm not putting up with this anymore. And there's right now hundreds of people all over the world that decided we're not going to put this with this anymore. And they don't want to put with the alterations, and they don't want to put up with the totalitarianism that exists inside the Church of Scientology right now. So there's a lot of people now all over the world practicing Scientology outside the Church of Scientology, or I should call the Church of Spiritual Technology.
Yes. And many people. I mean, most of them are pretty quiet about it. Aida and I are not quiet people particularly.
No, I'm not that type.
We're pretty outspoken. And believe it or not, the show is now over.
Okay.
So we'll see you next time. Thank you to my guest Aida Thomas, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
De Alto Cedro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarí. De Alto Cedro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarí. El cariño que te tengo no te lo puedo negar. Se me sale la babita, yo no lo puedo evitar. Cuando Juanica y Chan Chan en el mar servían arena, como sacudí el jibe, a Chan Chan le daba pena.